It's right here. Okay, Elisha ben Abuya. There is a Tosfos that quotes from the Yerushalmi that Abuya, his father, so it's Elisha is the person's name, ben Abuya, the son of Abuya. So Abuya was also one of the biggest rabbis of his generation, and the Yerushalmi tells this really interesting story that by I think his circumcision, once he was, it must have been a circumcision once he was born, but like within the first week or so of his life, uh, his father gathered all of the great rabbis, and there's like these miraculous kind of fire, this miraculous fire kind of descends, and it's all sorts of really kind of intense spirituality. And Abuya says, like, wow, if this is the power of Torah, like I want to like dedicate my son to this. And it's implied or it's clear from the Gemara that Abuya was only interested in Elisha, his son, learning because of the power that it had. So this is actually also like a very powerful teaching that Torah, like everything, is a tool, and it doesn't belong to us. It's meant to be used and harnessed for the work of the one who gave it, God. So because Abuya, because Abuya kind of framed it in a certain kind of way, it sounds like the rabbis say that either on some sort of spiritual level, the intergenerational trauma that we inherit is always complicated. I feel like invariably we're processing things that we're not even aware of. But it sounds like there was some sort of impact that made it easier for Elisha to be kind of tempted and inevitably to go off, because it wasn't the Torah for the Torah, it was the Torah for what the Torah was capable of doing, and that seems to be seen as a deficiency. That in some places there's honor and glory for knowing a lot of Torah, but if that's what inspires the person to do it, then it's not about God and it's not holy. It's like everything else. It's being manipulated as a system of oppression. Okay, so let's continue. So a person who learns as a child, what is it comparable to? Lidyoi ksuva al niyar chadash, like dye that is written on a new piece of paper. The paper of then was different than the paper of today. We don't really erase and reuse. Now our paper's on a screen, we press clear and it's brand new. But there they used to have whatever it is, papyrus, but they would scrape it off, with a rock to be able to make new space. So of course it's a little bit schmutzy, it's a little dirty, you can't see it so well. What's important, I think, for us in this teaching is that when it says halomed yeled, when a person learns, what's implied is as a child. It doesn't, the commentators are really explicit here. It doesn't mean while a person is a child, but rather as a child, meaning a child is excited about the material. A child is focused, is not worried about paying the bills, is not worried about like the consequences of the bigger world. Am I looking at yesterday? There's a footnote, am I in the right place? Yeah, okay. Somebody else is, okay, good. I get disoriented with no effort, so it wouldn't surprise me. So so what it's trying to tell us is that a child is able to absorb material not just because their brain is developing or changing at a faster pace, and therefore they're able to pick it up, but rather there's a certain kind of temperament of a child, right, which is kind of counterintuitive because they don't necessarily focus for the same amount of times that we do and those type of things. And this mission is very much focused on maturity, comparing grapes to things which mature. But rather that when a person is excited and is curious and is focused on trying to understand, in that way, when we kind of can take out the arrogance of like, I know better because I'm old, like I've been through the world, I've gone through, like, you can't teach me something new, I know it all already. Hopefully children, because they really, especially when they're learning to read and write, they know they don't know anything. Like there's something actually beautiful, like, how do you want me to do this? I don't know how to write my name. It's like, it's actually like, they're completely open to receive. And so that's what this mission on some level means, that we need to learn as if we know that we don't know anything. And I'm sure I've shared this to you, but for me, around knowing that the moment that it clicked, that my inability to grasp it was because I'm cis, was the most generative moment in all of the work that I do, knowing that I actually can't know. Meaning I can't experience it for myself. And so when a person is able to kind of sit down to say like, all I can do is like receive, all I can do is be a vessel. So then they're open to being able to receive. All right, let's, we spoke about it this morning for the two people who were listening about being a vessel for Hanukkah. Just, it's relevant to this. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want people to get nauseous from need some Dramamine before the class, the motion sickness. There's the famous question from the Beis Yosef: why is Hanukkah 8 days if there's only if there was enough oil for 7? Sorry, if there was enough oil for 1 day, the miracle was only 7 days. So it's a famous question from the Beis Yosef. Thousands of answers that are given. There's one that I said over this morning from the Derech HaMelech. That's about 250 years old. Who is sensitive to the language of the Gemara that it says a pach shel shemen. It doesn't say a vessel that was filled with oil or a vessel of oil, but a vessel for oil. That the type of vessel that was found was one that should hold the oil. Saul, are you saying something? Okay, good. So sometimes people are.
I'm reminding myself that's what you said.
That is what I was there. Okay. If it sounds familiar, there's good reason. You were one of the two people. Okay, so that it had the seal of the Kohen Gadol in that the vessel was pure. The vessel was pure, and the miraculous piece, which happened on the first day, which is why there's 8 days of Hanukkah, is that somehow they were able to generate this oil. But the novelty is that they found a pure vessel for it. That was the miraculous piece. And the truth is, he doesn't say this, but I said it this morning, that's actually the language of both the Gemara and the Code of Jewish Law, that it says, my Hanukkah, what's Hanukkah? On the 25th day of the month of Kislev, there's 8 days of Hanukkah. The language speaks to that on the 25th day, right? The day that they found the empty vessel, there's like 8 days of Hanukkah in the 25th. Happens to be that it takes 8 days to get it out. But the message is that like when we are a pure vessel, so then there's constantly, it's a shift in thinking about preparation for Hanukkah. That yes, we're supposed to be the light and we're supposed to dispel the darkness and all of that. But how do we actually get the light? The light is coming down all the time. The divine energy, the shefa, the spiritual parts are flowing. It's just that we need to be a receptacle. We need to be a vessel. And that's actually the way the rabbis understand the relationship between, on a Sefer Torah, the cloth, the parchment, and the letters. That the letters are the soul to the body. The parchment's the body, the ink is the soul. And that's why in the very famous and horrific martyrdom story, where one of the rabbis is wrapped in a Sefer Torah, we read about it on Yom Kippur. It says that the scroll was consumed, but the letters weren't burnt. The letters floated up to heaven. So it's analogous to the body and the soul. So when we think about like having what kind of parchment is the good type of parchment, it's the pure parchment, it's the clean parchment, it's the new, it's the fresh. That doesn't mean that it's young. What it means is that there isn't stuff there. So when we as older people come to sit and learn, right? So there's all sorts of stuff there. But when we can create a space to say, I want to be able to hear the voice of the text. I want to be able to see, in Yiddish we say, vashteta. What does it say? What does it say? What is it saying to me? And then processing that information through who we are, the result of our unique life experiences, right, can provide a worldview and a perspective. But in terms of absorbing the material for itself, the material needs to be able to have a voice free from what it's saying to me as who I am. Because this is one of the things that the guy earlier today was saying, like, Rabbi, I believe everything you're saying, but you're saying this through the lenses of, right, somebody who's an ally. What happens if I'm not an ally? So I said, okay, what would happen if you weren't homophobic, right? What would happen if you weren't, in other words, you're telling me to take away one set of lenses and I'm telling you to take away another set of lenses. Just look at the text for the text, right? But you also have to separate out what society was raised in a very conservative, politically conservative space. So that's the struggle for everybody, to be able to see the words for what it says. Then once we can understand what it says, so what does that say to me as who I am? What can I offer that through the world? Okay, so let's go back into the Mishnah. Share screen. Okay, so again, this is the idea of the ink that's writing on the paper. A person who learns as someone who's old, L'dioi ksuva al niar machuk. It's like somebody who's wrote with ink on kind of erased paper. So when we think about what does it mean to learn like somebody who's old, what on some level that means is that a person who looks at the material is like, there's nothing new for me here. Like I've seen this before. It's not. In fact, Chiddush, I believe, there's great gematrias around Hanukkah. Maybe we'll speak next week about the idea of a Chiddush, meaning both of a novelty, but also the novelty is it's something that's new. And so the idea of being able to have a kind of an access to this divine light is something that actually allows us to have new ideas. And of course, the way the mystics understand it is that there's no new ideas, right? Sorry, we're shifting back. I would like seeing people's faces. So when we talk, the verse says there's nothing new under the sun. Ein chadash tachas hashemes. There's nothing new under the sun. Chadash, new, and chiddush is the same letters, same order. So Rashi there says, you're right, there's nothing new under the sun, but there are new things above the sun, meaning in a spiritual realm, there is new things. And the way the Sfarim understand is that each person's chiddush, what the new ideas, the original ideas that people offer as a result of their soul, their letter in the Torah being able to be actualized. And so when there's the rabbis understand that the light from the very beginning of creation was saved for the righteous, it was hidden in the Torah. And so this divine light is that which is able to be illuminated when we are able to access that on a soul level through offering our own perspectives. But if a person says this, and I've seen this Mishnah 20 times, it's already an old, whatever the phrase is, so then there's nothing new there, right? But if a person understands that actually what's there is eternity, it's infinite, it's all the things, all connected below the surface. So then when a person reads it with a fresh perspective, you can see things for the new things. So that's the difference between a person who's learning like someone who's a child as opposed to someone who's learning. So it's less about, it has nothing to do with a person's age, but more about whether or not a person feels like there's what to learn from it. Okay, let's continue back in the Mishnah, and we'll try to read through the end of keeping shifting over here. Okay, this is already a new author. So before we get to the new author, this is on some level some sort of rebuke or some sort of karma for Elisha ben Abuya, that there's certainly something that's, it's a judgment on him that he wasn't able to learn the way that he was supposed to, because had he followed his own teaching, right, so then that clear ink would have stayed permanent on that clean parchment. But there was an erasure, and there was new things being written, and that is seen as some sort of deficiency for him. Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda ish kfar habavli omer haloimed min haktanim lamahu doimem. So this is also a similar teaching. He who learned from the young, min hakatanim lamahu doimet, to what is that person compared? La'oichel anovim kehois v'shoise yain megitai. So this is comparable to a person who is drinking or eating unripe grapes, which evidently are very tart and difficult on the teeth, and wine from their own vat, as opposed to that which has matured. So here also, it's kind of a play on the words of maturity, both around grapes and around our own age. What is it compared to someone who's learning from someone who's older? Right? So drinking older wine and eating ripe grapes. Rabbi Omer, so Rabbi, of course, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, who's at the very end of the times of the Mishnah, the one who redacts it. Al Tistakel, this is it's a very, very, very famous quote, and it's a beautiful quote. Rabbi Omer, Rabbi says, Al Tistakel bekankan, don't stare at the vessel. El b'mashi yesh, but rather that which is contained in the vessel. Yesh kankan chadash male yashon. There are vessels which are new but have old wine, v'yashan, an old vessel, she'afilu chodesh ein bay. You can have an old vessel that looks like there's got to be something really precious inside, but it's actually empty. It doesn't even have new wine. So this, of course, is coming to bridge these different teachings, that you have principles, right? That there's the young, there's the fresh, there's the learn from somebody who's mature, but not from somebody who's young. Says Rabbi, yeah, but you can't judge who's young and who's old by looking at the skin and the number of wrinkles. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you can have, right, a person who's very, very young, who's got an old soul, who has wisdom, who has what to say. And sometimes you can find somebody who's been through this world, for a very long time, but hasn't necessarily harvested the nuggets of the truth through that teaching, through that existence. And so the idea is that there's wisdom everywhere, and that a person always needs to take the good from the other things which are there. This just reminds me of a Gemara that's one of my favorite Gemaras, and I said it over when we got arrested about 3 years ago in the Senate Rotunda. They asked me to speak for a couple of minutes. I believe RSK also spoke, but it was about immigration. And the Gemara says in Tainus, I think it's like Yud Tes 19, about this young student who leaves the study hall and is going to go back to his hometown, feeling very good about himself, that he's learned all this Torah. And I think I said this even over recently. I can't remember if it was here or not, so forgive me if it's always good to repeat. But this person feeling very good about himself is met with a stranger along the way. Rashi says the stranger was Eliyahu Hanavi, the prophet Elijah, who was there to drop some knowledge on this rabbinical student. So and he presented himself as very homely, as being kind of strange in appearance. And this rabbinical student was kind of taken aback when this person dressed up, says, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi, like, Rabbi, good afternoon, nice to meet you, peace upon you. Instead of responding, Aleichem Shalom, he kind of responds like, oh my gosh, you're so ugly. Is everybody from your town as ugly as you are? And he even uses this language of reikam, like empty one. And Eliyahu Navi says, to him, not yet revealing who he is, that's a really good question. Why don't you go and ask the artisan, the craftsman who formed me? And this young student was not expecting such a profound answer from, right? In other words, the wisdom that was contained within ostensibly this empty vessel. And it's a great Gemara, it's worth looking up. But basically, he won't forgive him. He comes off his thing. He asks for forgiveness. I'm so sorry. And he says, no. We have to go ask him. Like, you have a good question. Let's go ask the artisan. So he schleps him to the thing, to the city, and it was a teachable moment. But I think that there's something really powerful in the recognition that wisdom is contained in all sorts of places, in all sorts of containers, and what the world often elevates as the position of, the storage house of this wisdom is often deeply disturbed and distorted. So how is it that we're ever able to be discerning? So part of it is through the tradition of Rebbe to students, right? And I think that that's part of why this is all joined. That you have Rebbe, you have Elisha ben Abuya who says one thing, you have another Rebbe who says that, and then you have Rebbe who's like kind of the person who puts it together and the one who organizes the Mishnayos, to say, like, at the end of the day, we all have to think for ourselves. At the end of the day, we can't rely on the environment. We can't rely on other things. You have to be able to recognize what's true to you. All right, I know there was a lot of talking. Questions? We have a few more minutes. Rebuttals? Yeah, please, Doug.
Okay. My book is kind of divided differently than you, so
a lot of them are. Yeah, so I just follow Samaria. Yeah.
But you combined the one about Elisha ben Abuha and Rebbe Yosei bar Yehuda. That's as far as I get, but they're somewhat contradictory in my mind.
Say more.
But maybe you said that. But in one, it says, it's kind of saying when you're young, you're more open to learning than when you're old. You're not so good at learning. But then it says you shouldn't learn from somebody who's young. You should only learn from somebody who's old. And
yep.
To me, that's a contradiction.
Yes, and I think that on some level is the point, and maybe this is why, at least according to Sefaria, these three teachings are putting together, because Rabbi Yehuda says, and sometimes the old is really the new, and sometimes the new is really the old. So I think the idea is that yes, a person should be enthusiastic and a person should be youthful in the way they approach knowledge, but also know where to look for that knowledge. That knowledge is often found by those who have kind of practiced life longer. Says Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, yes, and sometimes that wisdom is actually in the youngest and the simplest, and then sometimes what's presented as the wisest is actually not. So I think it's almost like a chiasmic. It's not ABBA. There's a term for this. It's not even the intersectionality. There's a way in which the first one has an unintended consequence to one extreme. The second it's the way in which Abraham and Isaac and then kind of end up with Jacob. There's kind of I'll try to find better words, but yes, your observation is a fantastic observation. And I think within my tradition, that question is a proof to something. So what is that coming to teach us? People should think about. Yes, Debbie. Just unmute yourself.
Okay. The way I heard that comparison was that the important part of the young person was not that he was young or not old, but that he even knew or sensed that everything was new to him. So he had a tremendous excitement and anticipation to suck up anything he could get. And I think that on the other end, it's not that if you're old, you're automatically, smart and everything. It's that sense of I don't know, excitement, awareness, anticipation that there is something, as much as that there's even something more new that you don't know. And you could be 112 years old and feel that, and you can be 32 and not feel that. So I don't think it's a contradiction.
Beautiful. I think people can read this in a lot of different ways. We would like to try to make sense of it. Like we would like to try to find a way in which it all flows together. But certainly on the simplest, it needs an explanation. Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah, please, Sharon.
First of all, the thing with the paper, a child is like a blank piece of paper because I teach pre-K to grade 5. You can see what happens to a child. They come in as a blank piece of paper, and it's what we in their environment does to them. And as for learning, you can see it's more difficult for me as an adult to learn than it was for me as a child. First of all, I can't memorize the way I used to memorize. Something just physically, I think, happens to us. But also children have no fear in the beginning. And that's why I think they soak everything up like a sponge. I won't go skiing now, but you take a 3-year-old and put skis on them and they'll go skiing. They don't know to be afraid. So I think it's all right what's there. Like, I don't think
Beautiful.
There's any.
Yeah, it's so, I don't know if everyone knows Joy Layden. Joy Layden is an amazing poet and human and a woman of trans experience. She's a professor of English literature at Stern College. And we were on a Zoom call, and she made this observation about something we're doing at CVS State together. And she made this observation that, there are things that we don't do well that we would never do in public. For some of us, that's cooking. For some of that's karaoke, right? If people are there. But in our own space, right? If somebody was giving a teaching, teaching something on Zoom, and we could be here in our yoga pants and nobody would, eat what we're cooking, then we're much more, right? And I think you're 100% right. For kids, they're like, okay, we're going to cook today. Nobody's like, well, what happens if mine doesn't look pretty? Like it's not, so it is. And like there's something that's lost in our ability, because you get to a certain place, you're like, listen, this I do well, this I don't do well. As you know, I'm a horrible speller. There's zero chance I am going to enter into a spelling competition. And the truth is, even writing things in public, I am hesitant. But like taking notes for myself, I know what the word is, even if, Wendy's like, you don't have any of the letters right. But anyway, so we all still go, yeah, please, Doug.
I just want to say that despite what's been said, I feel as I get older, I'm a more enthusiastic student than I used to be.
You are a lucky breed.
And, I'm seeking these things out that 20 years ago I would have had, would have just gone right by me and I would have said, so what?
It's beautiful. It's inspiring. It's amazing. I can just reflect that you're obviously special. I think.
Well, I think you could be a different type of learner.
Yeah.
Like I think we are like I love taking certain things now that I wouldn't have taken then, and I don't think it's because of age. I think it's because it doesn't matter now. Now you just want to learn because you want to learn. Years
Yeah.
ago, sometimes you had to learn because you had to learn something to be in school or wherever. I've been saying the same psalm for 4 years. I swear I don't know the first line by memory. 4 years since the election.
Yeah.
It happens. Maybe I just don't want to learn.
There is, I think, right, there's a quality of learning that comes with maturity, that a person is able to like hear something and say, hold on, let's not go so quickly. I want to let that sink in. I want to let that like marinate. I want to like carry that. I want to sit with that. And when a person has a certain menuchas hanefesh, a person is like in a certain kind of place of stability, they are able to kind of, internalize material a lot better, even if they can't memorize it as fast. All right, friends, have a wonderful tonight. Is the custom is to light the first candle, and we will continue, God willing, next week. Have a wonderful Shabbos, a freilich and Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah to everybody. It's good to see everybody, and
Same to
stay
you,
safe.
Rabbi.
Happy
Take care.
Hanukkah.
Happy
Hopefully
Hanukkah.
see you in the morning.
God willing.